Welcome. We are talking politics and religion without killing each other. I am your host, Corey Nathan. It is an honor to be a part of the Democracy Group, a network of podcasts that examines what's broken in our democracy and how we can work together to fix it. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Really excited about it. We have links in the show notes so you can find the YouTube channel, but also there's a link to being able to leave us a review. Like I said, that link will be in the show notes. All of this stuff helps. We can continue having great conversations like the one we're having today as part of our Meet the Majority series. I decided to do this series because the election results, frankly, came as a surprise to me, as I've mentioned on prior recent episodes. And I'm guessing that it's come as a surprise based on my conversations with other people. It came as a surprise to a lot of us. Now, our tendency might be to think that those who vote differently are just those people, or to have this picture of some fringe extremist that we just don't have to think about or take seriously. But the fact is that in this case, a majority of voters voted for a different presidential candidate than I did. And I say presidential candidate because let's remember, presidential candidate is just one line on a long ballot. And I was having a conversation with somebody I love, somebody in my family just last night. And we realized as we were going through the different lines in the ballot, we actually voted the same on like 90% of it, but we voted differently when it came to the president. So we were like, oh yeah, you're one of them. But as it turns out, it's a lot more complicated than that. Not just on the ballots that we fill out, but as people. Let's remember that. So we all have these psychological and emotional responses like that we just kind of categorize somebody based on their presidential vote in this case, that we try not to really process that there are people who think differently than we do, who think certain issues are more important than other issues, who get their news from different sources, or just process what's happening in the world differently. And the thing is, as I began to have more of these really candid conversations with people in my family, close friends, people I've known my whole life, any number of people I love, I realized we can either continue to segregate and separate ourselves, and at best just have the kinds of relationships that are sort of rigid and limited. And it's like, we can't talk about that. And all the while, just like silently looking at each other, in our heads, just thinking this person in my family, or this person that I've known my whole life is one of them, one of those people who, let's face it, I hate those people, right? That's what's going on in our internal dialogue. But the other way to go about it is what I'm trying to do. And I hope that maybe conversations like these can encourage others. And it's hard. It's the hard work of staying in relationship with each other, not with the intent to convince somebody of how you think or how you voted, or persuade or to win some imaginary argument. Although I will have the conversation, I will go there, I will disagree. But when we go there, the exercise, the practice, if you will, is to lead with curiosity. Curiosity, not contentiousness. So that's what I'm going to try to do today. I'm sure I'm going to mess it up in all kinds of ways, but I'm going to do my best to lead with curiosity, allow us to disagree where we disagree, but to allow our love and the thickness of our relationship be more prominent than those disagreements, and to really try more to understand each other, more so than trying to change each other or dominate each other. So anyway, long wind up, I know, than usual, but I hope that all makes sense. So with that, I want to dive in. I want to introduce somebody I love, somebody I've known for most of my life. We grew up together. This is my friend Natalie. Just to give you an idea of when I think of Natalie, she's part of the glue of what's kept a group of us that grew up together close. We've been having these high school reunions, and that's kind of the formal get together. But really, anytime any of us are in the same area, Natalie's part of like what brings us in and what keeps us together. In fact, I remember in high school, there were times when, there might've been a high school kegger here and there. And Natalie's one of the first people I would have thought of like, oh man, I'm in bad shape. Help me out. So is that fair? Is that a fair way to put it?
Who was in bad shape?
Me.
Was it you? It was you in bad shape?
Any one of us. I mean,
Did I help you out, Corey? I hope I did.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Sometimes it was like, okay, we're not going anywhere. You gotta lay down, let's call it a night.
The mother hen.
Yeah.
The mother hen. So I'm not letting anybody take advantage of anyone.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
But anyway, but you're to this day, you're still kind of like the glue that keeps a lot of us together, and it's really
Thank
nice.
you. I appreciate that. I
So
don't
it's
feel that way right now because, sometimes you have to withdraw to survive. And I'm happy that you reached out because, you know, you have been interesting to me over the years, although we've never really had a conversation because I know I believe you converted from Judaism to Christianity,
yeah, about 20 something
right?
years ago. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's huge, and that doesn't happen very often, like among friends, in friend groups. And you're probably one of the only person. I mean, I've only heard of, Christians converting to Judaism for marriage and things like that.
Yeah.
Um, but I think that for you, especially being around a huge Jewish community where we grew up, I mean, it was very largely a Jewish community. And me being Italian and Catholic, and also I came from Brooklyn, so my neighbors were Hasidic.
Oh, where in Brooklyn were you? Were you in Crown Heights?
Gravesend. Gravesend.
Oh,
So it's
okay.
the Avenue R and Kings Highway,
Oh,
not far from Ocean Parkway.
yeah. So my grandparents were where they retired was Avenue Z in Ocean Parkway. So
Yep.
they weren't too far down. And my mother, she grew up on the other end of Ocean before there was Ocean Parkway really, but what ended up becoming
Oh,
Avenue A in Ocean Parkway. So
okay. Yeah.
yeah,
Close to
all,
Manhattan. So
all roads lead to Ocean Parkway, I guess.
yeah, exactly. That's where
When did you
people.
move? When did you guys move to Jersey?
I was 8, so I think it was 79. It was 79,
Mm,
1979, and my whole world changed. But yeah, my neighbors in Brooklyn were Jewish
okay,
and some Hasidic, and we played with them, and that was just my world. So
right,
when I came to New Jersey, it was no different for me. It was, I had my Jewish friends. So we were surrounded by, all Jewish from what I remember. And
right.
then later on, when we were in high school, I came from Brooklyn. So I'm very proud of being from Brooklyn. So
Yeah.
then all the people from Staten Island, the Staten Island Italians came in.
Oh, that's right. Bert was
Bert,
one of the,
Nick,
yeah, Nick.
Muscarella,
Yeah.
I think Secretario, I think they're from Staten Island. I don't want to offend anyone.
Oh, and Louis D. He came in a little bit later, right?
Oh, okay. Was he? Yeah.
Yeah, I think they were from Staten Island, but they came
All
in when we
right.
were in junior high school, right?
Well, not many people seem to be from Brooklyn like I was. Everybody came from Staten Island. So, but all of my friends growing up were Jewish. And so that's what I'm used to. And so hearing you, convert to Christianity was unusual.
Oh yeah, and it wasn't like Catholic, because Catholic to me is basically like Jews and Catholics are basically the same. It's like the Jews
Yeah.
invented guilt and the Catholics perfected it, and that was really the only difference. But it was like Bible thumping, born again evangelicalism that
Mm,
I became.
yeah. That's
So
that's interesting, like you belong in the South, not California.
So here's a funny thing. Lisa and I have been talking about this. Lisa grew up in Alabama,
Right.
Granny scrubbing behind her ears every Sunday morning, dragging her, to church. And,
Right.
so when I became a Christian, I told her that morning, I'm like, hey, I prayed this, whatever prayer, and I think I'm a Christian now. First thing she says is like, if you think I'm going to church, you got another thing coming to you. And we ended up going to church as a family for, a long time to get
Nice.
all of us. The kids went to Christian school. Just
Right.
this week, she said, she's been hinting at it, but literally just this week, she said, I think I'm going to start taking classes and maybe convert to Judaism. Like
Look at that.
we end up going the other way,
Yeah.
you know? So
But
I
then
would
it's
love it.
amazing because you could both relate to each other
Oh yeah. Well, I
on
would love
both.
it because I still identify as a Jew. It's like uh
Okay.
I don't know if did I tell you this story? When I go to Chabad, my dad goes to the Orthodox community here.
Mhm.
And when I go on Saturday mornings, almost every time Choni, the rabbi, he gives me what's called an aliyah, which is you get called up to the Torah, you say a prayer in that portion of the Torah that they read. And Choni knows I'm a Christian. And his reasoning is, well, you got the whole thing about Mashiach wrong, but you're still Jewish. You can't change your face. So in a lot
That's
of ways, I mean, in the most fundamental ways, you can't
yeah.
change who you are, right?
Right.
So
You were bred Jewish,
yeah,
and
exactly.
that's
So
fine. And you're a Jew for Jesus.
I guess I guess so. I don't know if I'd identify with that group. It's like this
Okay.
popular
A
group or whatever, but
little bit of a joke,
yeah.
but you know,
No, it's all
so I
good.
mean, I could say, growing up Catholic, in Brooklyn, Italian Catholic from New York, moving to New Jersey. I was from a very conservative upbringing. So everyone in my family is a Republican. I was the tree hugging liberal.
Oh, okay. When
I
when did
was
you start becoming interested in like any political issues? Like how did you like
95,
oh, what was it about 95 that got
maybe
you?
90, maybe 94, maybe 93. But real quick, I grew up in that environment. So my father was Navy, he was real hard as nails. My mother was, everybody's from Brooklyn, everybody's Italian, everybody's strict, Catholic, going to church all the time. Um, and it was a very strict upbringing. It was, to keep you in line. And so I listened to all those ideas over time, and I guess I just went in one direction, like within me. I told you I describe myself not as necessarily a Republican, but a Kennedy Democrat because
Yeah.
it's more moderate. They were more conservative. I think what I kind of remember, they were more towards the middle than far left back then. But I that's how I describe myself, not necessarily a Republican, but more of a moderate Democrat,
Yeah. Yeah. No, that
and I,
that makes sense. Because the parties had different coalitions back then. Like you had Rockefeller Republicans, which were liberal Republicans. But
mm,
I don't know, the different issues that ended up that got people to register one way or the other. There were a different set of issues, and the order of priorities was just different. But I think that's fair to say that a lot of people who voted for Kennedy ended up 20 something years later voting for Reagan. So a lot of those lines got jumbled.
most of the country voted for Reagan.
Yeah, I mean, 49 out of 50 states in
Carter and
94.
Mondale didn't have a choice.
Yeah. Oh,
They
I
didn't have
remember
a
that when
chance.
when we were in junior high school. Do you remember Mondale's brother came to our school and had like this debate with somebody from the Reagan campaign?
Really?
Yeah, yeah. It was a big deal. It was kind of a big
Wow, I
deal.
don't remember that.
Yeah.
My goodness. Well, that's nice of you to remind me of that. That's interesting.
Oh yeah, and Eric Horowitz knew my family were so my family, I guess it's funny because when I was growing up, my family was very much to the left. Carter,
Mm,
Mondale in those years, but that's when that show Family
family
Ties.
ties.
I was like an Alex P. Keaton
Keaton. Yeah,
conservative. So
right.
remember because sometimes I would come into school wearing a tie because I was
Yeah.
so influenced by
Yeah,
like, oh, this is the guy, and
that's great.
I started paying attention to I started paying attention to some politics. My father
Hmm.
was watching PBS every night, and he was reading certain writers. And then I started paying attention and realizing guys like William F. Buckley, when he was on, I think the show was called Firing Line. He was the conservative when
Mm.
he had Democrats come on and they have debates. I always ended up aligning a lot more with William F. Buckley in those shows, and I started reading a lot of his work. But I was the black sheep in the family when it came to a lot of the
Right.
political issues. So it's
And that's
interesting.
and that's good. That's fine because like what's funny is that you started out like Alex P. Keaton and I started out like, a little tree hugging liberal
Yeah.
and we kind of went in the opposite direction, but I think I'm more middle of the road, or although people will be like, "Oh no, you're far right." I'm really not far right. I just things over time. So you said when did I start changing? So um, I kind of got away from the idea of religion because it bothered me that I
Yeah.
felt like it was very cultish and
Mm.
I didn't want to be influenced. Kind of got away from, Jesus Christ, and more recently, I brought myself back to faith,
Yeah.
and my kids back to faith. My son goes to church more than I do. He
Are you going to
prays.
Catholic church or where are you going?
He goes to Catholic church. Both of my kids. I mean, we're not like too religious, but I try to, let them know, Jesus is there. Jesus is here for us. He's real, and pray to him, and he answers our prayers, just not necessarily in the way you want him to. It's going to come around a different way. And it does.
Yeah.
It does.
When it comes to prayer, sometimes the answer is yes, sometimes the answer is no. Sometimes the
Right.
answer is not yet.
Right. Right. It'll come when it comes, and it'll be the right thing at the right time, not
Mm,
when you need it or want it or the way you think it's supposed to be there. So I think once I went to college and I realized, at that time in the early 90s, we were the generation of who am I? I mean, I know the 1960s, they were too, the kids fighting, protesting against Vietnam War and all that,
yeah.
um, the hippies of that time were definitely, finding themselves. But Generation X, we were kind of what people describe now as the lost generation. Generation X, we thought, where did that name come from? We were kind of indescribable. They couldn't pigeonhole us into anything. We were all over the place. It was
Yeah.
kind of my sorority. There were different groups of girls, and we really were diverse. It was, Bible beaters and partiers, and then there was me, who was like, like you said, I was just like the girl who was there and there for support and for dancing. I mean, I was always up for a good dance.
By
So
the way, so you bring it up. You bring up dancing. So one of my favorite memories from those years, first of all, uh, I don't know if you know, but I battled mental illness my whole life. And those
Wow.
years, 18, 19, 20. So the first couple of years when everybody was going to school, that was the first really, really serious bout in my adult life or young adult life. Like it was up until the last couple of years, it was probably the darkest of that struggle. But there are these like little shining moments that are like shining lights. And there was one night you and Jessica and me and Ira were in the house in New Brunswick that was
Yeah.
me and Eddie's
Yeah.
house, the party house or
Yep.
whatever.
Yeah.
So there was one night and we were all down in the basement and Brown Eyed Girl comes on. And do you remember that? And
Yeah.
we
Of
just all
course.
broke into just kind of wonderful,
Yep.
uninhibited dance. It was just
Yeah.
joyful, dance. It was, and I just remember this image of the group of us,
Yeah.
and it was really terrific.
And
It
you and
was.
I do the Lindy
That's
to
right.
the Brown Eyed
That's right.
Girl.
Well,
That's our song,
I had to
Corey.
learn the Lindy for my bar mitzvah, so I knew how to.
Oh my God. My mother and I used to Lindy in the kitchen.
Oh, that's funny. That's funny.
Yeah.
So yeah,
That's
there was.
really nice. I
Yeah,
love that. I think of you every time it comes on too.
that's
So
funny.
there we are. We're connected, East Coast, West Coast. We're bringing the country together, you and me, singing
Yeah,
in.
yeah, absolutely. So you were going to school. Weren't you working with you were learning sign language and stuff
I
and
did. I did. I went to a junior college up in Massachusetts, and then I transferred to Towson, and I was business. That was what, you had to choose business in my family. Very conservative, choose business. That's the safe way to go. Well, that wasn't for me. I changed my major like 5 times. I finally took sign language, and that was, the changing point, the turning point for me in my life. And I found what I wanted to do. And finally, the first time ever, I started getting straight A's. My parents did not believe it was my report card. They had no idea. They're like, This isn't you. You doctored this somehow." And I said, "No, not this one. I didn't doctor this one, but this one's
yeah,
real. The other
yeah.
ones, yes. So you didn't know I got F's in the finance classes."
Oh wow.
Yeah, because we had dot matrix printers, and I used to change my
Man.
grades.
Oh, is that
Yeah,
right?
so they wouldn't know that I was taking the same class again the next semester.
Oh, that's funny. But this
Oh
this
yeah, Ira was part of the whole
oh
the whole
really? Oh,
era.
because
Oh
Ira
yeah.
really knew he was a hacker before that was even a term, wasn't he?
No, he didn't do that, but he helped me in some other way I won't talk about.
Okay. We
So
have
he might be mad at me for mentioning him, but he definitely
it's
helped
okay.
me.
We got the goods on him. We got the goods.
Yeah.
Um,
So anyway, I started turning my life around and became a good student. I wasn't a drinker, I wasn't a smoker. I was just more of like a girl who I liked to dance, and then I started getting um straight A's and good grades, and I joined a sorority, and I really turned it around for myself because I was ready to drop out of school. I was ready to leave
Mhm.
college and go work on the New York Stock Exchange with my
That's what I did. That's did you know that?
no.
Yeah. So I pretended I only pretended to go to school for a semester and a half. Um, but I had this like well, now I understand it. I finally got diagnosed I think it was earlier this year, early in 2024 as bipolar. So the way that played out then is I was in this deep, dark depression, but I still had this incredible drive and ambition. So the what would have been our sophomore year of college, one of the things I did do in college was join a fraternity. So one of
Yeah.
the guys graduates, he gets a job on Wall Street, and he's like, that kid, he was all kinds of messed up in all kinds of ways, but he was really good at raising money for us. So they
Mhm.
recruited me, what would have been my sophomore year, to be a stockbroker. I studied that year, got my Series 7, Series 63, and I guess what would have been our
Wow.
junior year, I was a stockbroker.
Mm. That's
A little bit in New York, most of but
impressive.
the office was in Red Bank. But what I was doing was I was in Red Bank making literally 300 calls a day. That was like, that was our MO, 9 to 12, 1 to 5, 7 to 9, making, dialing for dollars kind of a thing. As soon as work was over, all the other guys would go down the shore to the strip clubs. I'd go into the city to me and Jared were going to this little this theater conservatory.
Yeah.
So that was my life. Instead of going to college, I was a stockbroker during the day, going to theater
Wow.
conservatory at night.
That's
So
amazing. What a
yeah,
story. Like what a kind of just two totally opposite fields that
very different
brought
worlds.
together
Yeah,
and made work for yourself in that time to
yeah.
like at the time. But yeah, I was going to do that. And my mother said, no way. My father was ready to let me come home because he didn't want to be spending money on something that wasn't working. And my mother made me stay. And then I found sign language. And then it was around that time, at the end of college, when I was thinking, okay, who am I?
Yeah.
Like, who am I? Who am I really? What are my likes?
Hmm.
And then I started reading books, they had like self-improvement books. And I was like, oh, I'll do that, and I started reading that just to, help myself become like a better person, you
Okay.
know?
Do you remember
And
some of the books you were reading at that time?
oh God, no. God,
Like
they were so
Seven Habits of Highly Effective People was a big one in the early mid 90s, right?
really, I
Yeah.
don't remember any of it.
Yeah. That's funny.
I don't remember the books, but I
Yeah.
remember, help to, like trying to improve myself as a person. I'm like, I'm not a kid anymore. Where am I going to work? Where am I going to live? Am I going to try and stay down here in Baltimore? And I did try to do that. Um, I tried to get a job, a full-time job. I had a part-time job working in the field of deafness, and I tried to get a full-time job. It just didn't work out. I
Okay.
decided in 95 to finally, I said, okay, I'm going to move home. And because we graduated in 93, I stayed down
Right.
there for almost 2 years to, live my life. I loved it down there. My friends were down there and my life was down there. I'm not moving back to New Jersey. So in December of 94, I said, you know what? It's not working. I quit my jobs and I was like, for the last 6 months, I am going to go work at something fun. So I got a job at the coolest clothes store in the mall.
Okay.
And that's where I met my friend who was 2 years younger than me, and we wound up going cross country together. So it worked out.
Oh,
Uh,
wow.
we did go cross country in July of that year. When I moved home in June, I sent out resumes to try and find a job. I was like, I got to get a job. I have to get a full-time job. I did wind up getting a job while we were on the road. We were in New Mexico, and I
Oh, wow.
literally had an interview over the phone with this woman from the school that I wound up working for at first, from 95 to 98 in Passaic County. It was one of the schools I started at. Actually, the first mainstream school I started working at, worked with a student who was deaf, and I was an educational interpreter at the time. I didn't have a degree in that field. I had a degree in deafness undergrad, but I wasn't a teacher. I wasn't an interpreter. You didn't need that at the time.
Yeah.
So I did that, and from there, I was working with a boy he was a sophomore. He was profoundly deaf and he was smart. I mean, like brilliant. His IQ was off the charts. I mean, off the charts for kids his age. Um, he was amazing. And we used to talk about everything. And he was way smarter than me. And he took physics, and I tried to, you know, interpret that. And I didn't have any training. I tried to get training, and they kind of denied me because I was like late to applying. So he and I really worked with each other to help understand each other. And then we would have all these like philosophical conversations and conversations about politics. And he was a very smart kid. He's very successful, lives out in California. He's an art therapist now, really,
Oh,
really, yeah, has a family, really great success story. But, that was around the time I started to read uh, about politics and about government and tried to understand, you know, what my parents were talking about, what other people were talking about around me. And that's when I I began to do that. And that's when everything started to change over. Now it took from the time I registered to vote in
yeah.
what was it, like 90 something,
Yeah.
or when do we register to vote? I don't even know.
Well, some of us registered in 89. Our class just missed the 88
Oh,
election.
okay. So
Um,
I think the first election we voted in was Clinton.
yeah, the first presidential was
Yeah.
92. That would have been 92. Yeah.
Okay. So I probably registered around that time. I don't recall. Um, and I was registered Democrat until 2020.
Oh, wait, 2020? So you were still
2020.
registered Democrat in 16?
Yes.
Oh,
And I
interesting.
voted for Trump.
Okay, you voted for Trump in 16. Okay.
Yep.
All right. So that's a big deal. So you were Democrat.
Yeah.
Now, were you was something happening prior to the emergence of
Yeah.
Trump and Hillary
Yes.
Clinton as the candidates? Was something happening, or was it the emergence of these two candidates in 15, 16 that ultimately made it like, oh shit, now I got to rethink everything?
Yeah. No, I started thinking over time. It took a long time, which is why I mentioned that span of time. It was almost 30 years time where it took me to like, you know, change my mind slowly, um, and definitively over time. I hadn't probably voted Democrat since before Obama.
Mm. Oh, okay.
Yeah. I didn't
Okay.
vote for Obama. I liked Obama.
Yeah.
I remember reading about him, like this senator from Illinois. Like this guy is the real deal. Like, he seemed really smart. Like he just emerged, showed up on the scene. And then, just listening to certain things and over time, it just wasn't right to me. I wasn't sure who to vote for, when you're
Yeah.
just not sure. So I spoke to my dad. He's like, well, you got to go and vote. And I said, well, I don't know who to vote for. He said, well, vote for yourself. So I did. I voted for myself.
That's awesome.
I've done that more than once. I told you my son voted for me in this
Yeah.
past election for mayor, for board member, for town council. I was like, all right. He's like, Mom, I'm voting for you.
Yeah.
He's
That's
like,
great.
your name needs to be out there. I was like, all right, thanks for the vote of confidence.
Well, in all seriousness, so we'll talk plenty about the presidential, but when you get a ballot, do you vote one way up and down the ballot, or you know, are
It
you?
depends. It depends on what it is. Sometimes yes, but I haven't. I in 2016 when I voted for Trump, I don't remember.
Yeah.
I probably voted also Democrat for others. I voted for Trump. And then there were others where I voted Democrat. So it was
Okay.
split for me in
Yeah.
2016. I don't remember exactly who or what, but like the last time in 2020, I voted to legalize marijuana and I regret that. I
Really?
regret that decision. Yeah, I do.
Why
I
do
think
why do you regret that? So you
I
feel differently
regret it
about it now. Why did you regret
because
it?
I wasn't really sure. I thought it was a good thing, medicinally for people. I think it probably is for
Yeah.
some people, but I think that it has been taken advantage of. And I think, unfortunately, and listen, I'm just speaking from like what I've observed,
Yeah.
um, that it's been used now, by like younger kids more freely, more openly, without fear of them, getting, um, in trouble for smoking pot or weed or whatever they call it because it's legal.
Mm, yeah.
And it's all over the place. And I feel like people are always high. Everybody's high
Yeah.
all the time. Like, what's wrong with you? And then you smell it. And I'm like,
Yeah.
oh,
Yeah. There it
everybody
is.
high all the time. Like, you know, and I just feel like maybe it's a decline in just kind of like civility.
Mm.
People, I do feel like there's more of a laziness going on here, like that kind of feeling,
Oh, that's
you know,
interesting.
because it's everywhere. It's just everywhere you go.
Yeah.
You could be like shopping in like, I don't know, Macy's and you smell it. I'm like, are you serious? Like, you seriously vaping here? Like,
Yeah. So take me to 2016. So you voted for Trump. Did you feel really strongly about that vote then,
I
or did?
did. I
Yeah.
did. I did. That was when I saw she was running, I was not happy. I mean, there were so many reasons why. I think we spoke about it the other day. Just over time, things that fell around them, the
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
Clintons.
So it was.
Things that fell around them that kind of, managed to the um, a Whitewater and people just showing up, not alive anymore, and Benghazi
Right.
and,
So
you know,
it was an opposition vote, but were you voting in favor of what you thought Trump could do as well?
yes, I was
Yeah.
happy. I was like, this guy isn't a politician. He's been popular all these years. I mean, everyone loved Trump. Everyone loved Trump. I mean, right? Like he was a celebrity.
I didn't love Trump.
He was okay. Many
I
people,
I did
go
watch
on.
a first season of Apprentice, but by
Oh,
the end of
okay.
the
I didn't watch
season,
that. I
yeah,
thought it
by
was
the end of that
mean. I
first
don't
season,
like
I'm
the
like,
mean.
oh, this isn't what I was hoping it would be. So there was this other show called The Prophet, or I think they still have it. My guy named Marcus Lemonis, where he goes in and he invests in small businesses. And you get to see how he thinks about those small businesses. He diagnoses what's wrong with the business and how they can improve. And then he helps them. Some of them he can't help. He's like, I can't help you. I'm not going to invest in you. But a lot of them he does. And they have this like business plan of how to get. So I was hoping The Apprentice would be more like that. And then I realized, oh, this is just a show, whatever.
It's just a show, and
Yeah.
it's, you're fired, you're fired. And
Yeah.
I thought it was kind of silly, but whatever. And so I watched it a little bit. I didn't I didn't love it, so I didn't really watch it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was like all the drama. I don't like those reality shows. I don't
Yeah.
like it. Like I can't imagine, somebody having to fire someone, but that's life, right? That's
But
reality.
I will say this, that I knew about him because the years that I was a stockbroker, I knew guys that were not other stockbrokers, but I knew guys actually our age, guys who graduated high school with, that were getting some of their first big contracts, like when they were building a Taj and some of the other things he was doing in AC. Um, and I had known people that he screwed over, like he didn't honor those contracts, and I knew people who lost their businesses, lost their marriages ended because of what happened with these big contracts and stuff. So I knew what he was doing down in AC, and that was his business practice. So back, at least going back to the early 90s, I knew kind of how he did business. So I don't know, I had a bad taste in my mouth going back as far back as the early 90s.
And the thing about that is that it's coming from your friends, so they have a first hand experience. But does that have to do with like bidding and they just lost the bid, or things like
It was a common business practice. It happened to me. Something similar happened to me when I was first starting out in the entertainment industry. My first studio job was with the Weinsteins, and I helped them with some marketing positions and stuff. And it was a business practice. These guys who are really powerful are like, yeah, I know you did this work for me, but either they avoid you and they don't pay you, or if you have the means and the relationships to put any sort of pressure on them, they drag it out and drag it out and drag it. In my case, I was dealing more with Bob than Harvey at the time, but in my case, I did end up finally getting paid about a year and a half later. But we had to settle 30 cents on the dollar of what our contract was. So that was just a business. I realized that that was a business practice. That was pretty much how Trump was operating a lot of his businesses. At, at the time, I'd heard it from my friends back then, and it's a story that you've heard repeated a number of times over the years. It was just a business. They do it because they can,
Right.
and if you're kind of ruthless about it, it's like, okay, you get away with it. Like it's not technically illegal, I guess.
Right.
Uh,
And that's all part of business.
yeah, yeah,
And unfortunately, people hate to hear that. I'm in education and people have come to me and said, "You agree with that?" I'm like, "I didn't say I agree with it. I said that's how it is."
yeah. That's how it
I
is.
didn't say I agree with things.
Yeah,
It's just that eventually you have to realize like you're small potatoes.
yeah,
There are a million
exactly.
people above me, and I'm not making the rules here.
Yeah,
And we have to do what our bosses and their bosses and ultimately the big boss, the governor says. We may not agree with it, but that's how it is. Unfortunately, there are things going on in New Jersey that have been made into law I don't agree with.
yeah. I will
And
say
that
that later in my career, when I got to deal with other studios like Universal and Sony and Warner Brothers, none of them pulled that kind of stuff. So I did have experience with other big, these huge behemoths. So that was kind of unique in this industry to the Weinsteins, but
Mhm.
everybody knew it. So, you can either take their business because you want to deal with the Weinsteins for whatever reason, or you could choose to do business with other people who do business the way that you want to do business. So, but yeah, you're right. It is part of the game, I guess. And, when you get to that, if you're somebody who's the big guy, you can choose to do it one way or the other. So I
Right.
don't know. Maybe it's idealistic of me to think that, nah, but
I mean, no
anyway,
one, listen, I'm not saying he's perfect. I don't know the guy. All I know is when I heard he was running, I thought,
yeah,
perfect. This is what America needs. We need a change. We don't need another 8-year run
right.
of the same administration. And I mean, all the people I knew didn't agree with her, when her husband was president and he gave her the charge of healthcare and
Yeah, there was a healthcare initiative. She
dropped the
was,
ball on
yeah,
that. And then, everything surrounding her with the Benghazi debacle. And
yeah,
you know, there just there wasn't there and there's other stuff I'm not going to get into because then
it's
everything
fine.
conspiracy
So,
theory, it's like, all right, like, listen, you read what you read. Do we know that we know all the media is not like 100% true. We're not there to see it. So you have to take what you read and then you have to discern for yourself
right.
what you think is true based on reason, based on your knowledge. I watch all the media. I watch, ABC sometimes. I watch NBC. I do watch CNN. I don't love to watch CNN. They're a little angry. I watch Fox. I watch Newsmax. I watch OAN when I can find it, and then I watch podcasts and I hear what they have to say. And there are people who like Trump and there are people who don't. And there are Republicans who like him and there are Republicans who don't. Dems who like him and don't. And listen, I was a Democrat who voted for him.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
was the statistic who did that. The suburban white woman who voted Democrat who voted for Trump.
right, right,
I was the statistic, and then I'm also the statistic switching parties from Democrat to Republican, you
right.
know, and
So what
so
was it? What was it that you saw in Trump that you were hoping he could do that was different? Like,
he was a different guy. He was
yeah,
different. He was not a politician. He was a businessman. He didn't owe anybody anything. He wanted to hold people accountable, and the minute that started to happen, the world turned on him.
mm,
When you look at it, you look at old videos, everyone, all the celebrities love him. They have him here and there, and oh, he's with this one and that one, and they talk him up. They're at parties. They have him as on cameos in their movies. I mean,
yeah,
he's in Home Alone.
yeah,
He's
Home Alone.
on Home Alone
Right,
too, and I'm
yeah,
like, my favorite part. Here he is. But then they changed because even I remember when he was debating Hillary and she was criticizing him for using certain practices or policies. It's like, well, you do the same thing. Like you're using the same as I am. No one, you're just, and no one knows about it. I forget exactly what it was. I'll look it up and tell you later.
That's all
But I
right.
can't keep it all in my mind.
So his demeanor didn't turn you off, like
No, I
his
think he's
yeah.
great. I think he's great. Listen, everybody always mean, he's mean. Listen, my dad was mean growing up. I love my dad. He loved us. He was mean. He was strict. He was mean. He was a military guy. He
Yeah.
was just like no nonsense. An Italian from Brooklyn. You didn't mess with my dad. You just
Right.
didn't mess with my dad. Ask Ira and ask Bert.
Yeah, yeah. So, but
They
what
joke
about
around about it, but you just didn't mess with my dad. He was a strict guy, but yes, he was mean. But listen, Trump didn't get to where he is by being the nicest guy on the block. This is not how people get to where they are. There's sometimes you have to be, the bad guy. And
yeah.
I'm not saying that in a way that like, oh, he did illegal things. I'm just saying I thought he was great. I thought he was what we needed. I think that, the world, everybody thought, oh, he's going to start wars. He's not going to start wars. He didn't start one war, not one. And he had leaders who never met with each other meet and come to agreements. And he, you know, imposed tariffs on China. Nobody's messing with China. Everybody's afraid of China. Nobody's going walking over the DMZ like he did. They're looking through their binoculars. He walked over, he met with Kim Jong-un. Whatever you think of that, he went there. He met with people. He kept the world safe. He keeps our borders safe. 17,000 people were coming over yearly as opposed to millions. Now it's estimated at 20 million people came over our board. They were walking before Biden got inaugurated.
Yeah.
They were walking in caravans before he got inaugurated, coming over. They stopped the building of the wall. Why? Why would you stop that? You could say, oh, you're xenophobic. I'm not xenophobic. That's not xenophobic. We are a country. We need to protect ourselves. In America, United States of America, we are the most powerful country, supposed to be the most respected country, supposed to be the most feared. We have the most unique constitution in the world, giving us our inalienable rights from birth or from citizenship, but from birth. We're born with those rights, and whether somebody will say it's racist, there is, I think it's the Ninth Amendment that says whatever's in here doesn't mean it's not an amendment. It doesn't mean it's not a right.
Hmm.
We'll add it later. you
Right.
know we'll add it later, like the ending of slavery came 100 years later. I mean, that was unfortunately, slaves had to wait 100 years. That stinks. That's horrible. It's atrocious. But unfortunately, if I think James Madison said, I read where he wrote and where it's written that he said, if I were to end slavery in the Constitution, it would create another war,
Hmm. Yeah, which
because I
ultimately it
can't
did.
do that overnight. I can't force people to change overnight. And they were all slave owners.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
owned slaves,
Right. So,
you know?
the Constitution, I've become a big fan, I've become a student of the First Amendment in particular. And I've shared on this program that the five freedoms that are articulated in the First Amendment, I have concerns that they're going to be further strained under this next Trump administration. Do
What's
you have
going to be further strained, Corey?
the five freedoms that are articulated in the First Amendment?
Huh?
So, for example, freedom of the press, freedom of redress of grievances, freedom of assembly, the two parts of the freedom of religion, freedom of speech. I bring it up because do you have any concerns about um, about the strains? Like, I'm not going to be hyperbolic and say, oh, democracy is going to end, or a democratic republic is going to end, or constitutional order is going to end. But do you have any concerns that democracy is going to take a step back, that it's going to
No,
be strained?
I
No.
don't. I think it's taking leaps and bounds forward, because I think that's how it was the past 4 years
In what
with
way?
with with uh, censorship on social media, censorship, the media on TV being very much, most of it, the legacy media, the mainstream media, being mostly liberal thinking. When you watch, the people, the commentators on, two, four, even five, seven, so ABC, NBC, all of those, CNN, they're always criticizing. It's constant Trump talk. That's all they do is talk about, criticize him. Even from the minute um, it was determined that he was the president-elect, they just start in again. They just, oh, we're gonna, somebody, I think it was Kamala, we're here to unite. We're here for unity and peace. And then, she said, but we're not gonna stop fighting. And okay,
Yeah.
I understand what she's saying, but at the same time, you're still resisting. Honestly, if you might have been on a different side of it, because if you're posting something that is in favor of the establishment, you're not going to get censored. But if you're posting something that's not in favor of the establishment, like you're pro-Trump or you're anti-mask or you're anti-Fauci or you're anti-vax or whatever that is, you're getting censored. And
So
it's happened to me. It's happened to everyone I know, fact checkers. It's like, okay, it was a picture of a bald eagle. What is false about that?
right.
Nothing.
So I want to push back on that a little bit, on a couple different levels. One is the freedom of speech, or freedom of expression, has to do with it, it has to do more with our government, whereas private companies are not subject to the same restrictions. Like those freedoms are ways to make sure that the government itself doesn't overstep its bounds. But if I have a company, that's my purview. And I'll give you a specific example, like when it comes to masks. So we have a window cleaning company, right? And a number of our clients didn't want people coming into their houses without wearing masks. So if I have an employee that doesn't want to wear a mask, I'm like, that's cool. You can work for some other company because it's my company. I'm not infringing on your freedoms. First of all,
Right.
I'm not the government. I'm a private company. These are my policies, right?
Right.
And my policies are constructed so that I can continue doing business with my clients, right? So it's not an infringement on his freedoms because he has a right to go work for somebody else. So
Right.
when it comes to private companies, whether it's Facebook or Twitter or whatever else, like they have the right as private companies to set their own policies. Now, it's not to say, not to get too in the weeds on this, but it's not to say that some of those companies didn't misbehave and that the government entities or individuals didn't overstep their bounds and trying to put their thumb on the scale. So I know that there was some shenanigans, and we could talk about any number of them, but I think there's too many rabbit trails to follow here. But the one other thing I do want to address here is when it comes to the liberal media, a couple things. One is if I don't tune into an entity, I don't tune into CNN because I like CNN. There are individuals there, or you said ABC a couple times. When I tune into ABC, the George Stephanopoulos thing on Monday morning, there's Sarah Isgur. She worked for Jeff Sessions when he was the AG. There's Chris Christie, and I know Chris Christie's not everybody. People who support Trump don't like Chris Christie these days, but solid Republican his whole life. Reince Priebus is on that panel, who is to this day a Trump supporter. So I tune in to listen to individuals so much more so to your point, which I think is a really important one to process and that I try to do myself is we have to use our minds. We have to discern, right? So I'm not just going to turn on some entity like MSNBC or CNN or read the New York Times and everything that they say, I'm going to like take it as gospel. I'm looking for certain individuals that I resonate with, like a
Right.
Sarah Isgur, in my case, Chris Christie. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, I think I do that too. And I like it when the news channels have somebody else on. I like it when they have somebody, like a Democrat on. There was a Lindy Lee. She's a Democrat. What are you doing? What do you call it when you give the funds?
Oh, she was a donor, yeah, a fundraiser, a
I'm
donor, or whatever.
signing to you. Do you see me signing? I'm signing it. It can't come out of my mouth. I should
Yeah,
give the funds.
right. Yeah, that's
So I
funny.
was watching last night. I think it might have been Newsmax or Fox or whatever, and she was on, and they were talking about Kamala Harris's campaign donations and how she started out with like $1 billion and
Yeah.
she's 20 million in debt, and how she gave to all the celebrities, and she paid $500,000 to be on the Sphere in Las
Mm.
Vegas, and how she, basically blew through that money and now owes, she's 20 million in debt. And Lindy Lee was, criticizing that. She was saying like that, I would be very hesitant to donate to the Democratic Party in the future. I think that's what she was saying. I drift in and out, but
Yeah.
I thought, okay, that's pretty reasonable,
Yeah.
and I think I like it when the different shows have somebody on and have an intelligent conversation. I mean, it's not because she said that. It was just I like to listen to other people talk, whether they agree with, conservative values or not. Um, because like I said the other day, I think we share the same values: family, faith, country, pride for our country, who we are as Americans. Um, and for me, military safety, all of that, and there are amendments that I am happy that are in place because I think they work.
Yeah.
They
Are you
they
happy
do.
the 22nd is in place right now?
What's the 22nd?
The 22nd limits a president to 2 terms and 2 terms
Oh,
only.
yeah. I mean, whatever. Yes. Thank you. I don't know them all by heart. I mean,
You know
sorry.
full well that Trump's going to be challenging that pretty soon. He's going to be like, "Yeah, I'm running in 2028."
No, I don't think so. I think that, listen, I don't think so at all. I
Okay.
think that he could become vice president.
I'm going to have you buy me a beer. Well, I don't like beer, but I'm going to have you buy me a drink the second that
No.
I'm flying to Jersey and you're buying me a drink when the second he starts singing that song.
All right, we'll see. We'll see, but I don't think so. I don't think that's his focus. I think his focus is getting us back to being, and what I believe, and it has nothing to do with any ism or ist, is America comes first. We
Yeah.
are first. Americans come first. You live in your house, your family comes first. You protect your family by building walls and locking your doors. We don't just let people in. There is a process, and that's what we were talking about the last time, earlier, and there's a process. My ex-husband is an immigrant.
Mm.
His family did it the right, everyone, they came in, through a legal process. It took him, he was 5 years old. He came from Beirut in the middle of basically, a war zone,
Yeah.
and came to northern Bergen County, New Jersey, and lived a very nice life. But he was 10 years old when they got citizenship. The dad, went through the process. There is a process, and that should be followed. You can't let just everyone in, because everyone is not here for the American dream.
Yeah, that's fair.
There are
That's
people
just being
here
realistic. Yeah.
who are cartel members, they are gang members, they are here trafficking people over that border. There are women and children getting raped every day, daily. And that's just the truth. And that stinks. It's a hard truth to face. Children are not being, transported without their parents. I mean, no parent in their right mind is sending their child thousands of miles from their home to go over a border to get to America. I mean, I don't think that that's really happening. I
Yeah.
mean, that's a whole other story, but there's people coming over our border. What happened to the children? There's like 300,000 children who are not accounted for. Where are they? and there's plenty of, um, articles I've read and podcasts I've watched and footage I've watched of the border. It's a mess. It has been left unattended. The border patrol, they're basically like not supported. I mean, they're trying to demonize what they do there. I mean, they have a huge job to keep people from coming into our country who are leeching from our system. Our tax dollars are going to support, illegal migrants. And I'm not saying, okay, they're seeking asylum, but there is also a process to seek asylum. And
Yeah.
that's happening. And I'm not saying that, you know, people don't come here to get away from, the atrocities that they're facing every day. Of course. I mean, that's what we're here for. But there is a process, and that has to be followed. And Trump keeps those things in place. So um I voted for Trump twice because he has America's interest, number one.
Hmm.
We're top, which we should be, not the war in Ukraine, not you know, whatever is happening elsewhere. Now, I feel differently about Israel because they're being, attacked by terrorists and Hamas, who's funded by Iran.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
have to
No,
keep
that's fair.
America prospering.
What I will say,
Why did he sign an EO on his first day? Stopping the Keystone pipeline. That cut that first day like something like 20,000 jobs. And I think that, without getting into other things, I really think people vote for Trump because they are worried about their family. They're worried about putting food on the table. Inflation has gone up, has quadrupled since, you know, the last 4 years. Gas prices, whatever. I make a joke about gas prices. It's not a joke. The gas prices aren't down. They're up since Trump was in office in 2020. They were, or 2000, whenever he left, 2020. There was like 187 was like the national average.
we were in the middle
No,
of a pandemic, though. I mean, nobody was driving. There wasn't a lot of demand for gas. So there was, anyway, I get it. I understand there for a lot of folks, what the focus is, a lot of folks are really concerned about immigration. A lot of folks are really concerned about inflation, and I understand. I get it. I was trying to have a conversation with another person that we graduated high school with. I can't talk to him. I was just saying, look, I get it. You're really concerned about the immigration problem. I
yeah.
understand. It doesn't concern me, but I don't like that. But I'm not going to tell you not to be worried about it. If you're worried about it, worry about it. And he just kept on yelling, how can you not think this? And how can you not think that? And he was just, frankly, he was just being an asshole. So finally I had to cut him off. Um,
Yeah.
but it is what it is. It's like, I'm not going to judge somebody. Like, if this is a primary concern for you, I'm not going to try to convince you otherwise. For me, immigration isn't, it's not as high on my list as some other things, right? But that's kind of what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to understand better. Okay, so this is the most important thing. This is the most important thing. I am concerned about these things, but I think he's got it right here, here, and here. I don't quite agree with that, but like I'm trying to understand the collage of what makes up how we end up making our decisions. Not only that, like again, what I said at the beginning, the how we vote on the presidential level is just one line in a really long ballot. So I could go down a list of any number of things you said, whether it's about Ukraine or Israel or immigration or the Keystone Pipe. Like we could have individual conversations about individual stories and subjects and policies and whatever. Um, let's just say that there's a lot of things I think I understand, and it's not even about agreeing and disagreeing. It's just that I understand this is important to you, and this is what
Yeah.
drives some of your decisions. So I can't believe that we've already been talking over an hour. It's like time has
Really?
flown. Yeah. So
Well, let me go back 1 minute
okay.
to immigration. I worry, Corey, and I respect that, that's not your concern. it may not be a concern because maybe it doesn't affect you immediately. It doesn't really affect me right now. Like I don't have, people like banging down my door and
Well, let me just
attacking me,
clarify.
but
It doesn't concern me because I find that the catastrophizing of individual stories and making it out as if all of these millions of people who want to come to America are all rapists and murderers and
right.
gang
And I said
members.
it wasn't. I know
Yeah.
that I said I know there are people who come here for the American dream. I think I said that.
Yeah.
I know people come
Absolutely.
here to better their families, and it must be really hard. It must be so hard to wait 10 years
Yeah.
to get here and go through the process. I can't imagine that, quite honestly. I can't imagine that, especially if you're living, maybe what might be a nightmare.
Yeah.
No,
Absolutely. Yeah.
I don't live
Absolutely.
that. I don't live that. And thank goodness I don't. But, of those people who came over, a lot of them are not here to make America better, to make their lives better. They're here to, do a job for a corrupt organization.
Yeah. No, absolutely. There's
Fentanyl, fentanyl coming over our borders, that scares the hell out of me. Fentanyl,
yeah, that hits
I
close to
mean,
home. So,
scares me to death. And it's easy for, these Mexican cartels to make. They order the ingredients from China. It's all synthetic, and it's very scary stuff. So I'm not saying that's everybody. I would never say that. Of course not. There are people who come here and are trying to make a better life for their children. I get that, and for their families. And there are people who come here without their families to
right.
try to get them here. Um, but it is a concern for me because I think like all our borders, they should be protected.
Yeah,
You know,
that makes sense. I don't think you're not going to get an argument from me about, oh, we
yeah,
should have
and
open
that's
borders or
where I'm
whatever.
going with that is that America is America because we have borders, because we have laws in place, because we have a process to through, and that's the same for any country. I can't just go to Australia and say, okay, I'm Australian now, and I can work here. You have to go through a process. It's the same with every country. But I think that, with him, I'm just confident that he's going to keep us safe. He's going to end these wars and, occupations and the bleeding of our taxpayer dollars to countries that aren't even NATO members.
Yeah. Like I said, I mean, we could talk about individual issues and hopefully, we'll have lots of conversations so we could talk about some individual issues. But
Yeah.
that's not really the point. The point of this conversation, again, is to meet the majority. A majority of people voted for Donald Trump in this election, which, by the way, in a way I was happy about. I was happy that he won the popular vote because if he lost the popular vote but won by the electoral college, um, that would have indicated every Republican, with the exception of 2004, that won president, uh, lost the
Bush.
popular vote,
Yeah.
but won by. So it would have indicated something problematic that was emerging. So I was happy that he won the
And I
popular
think
vote.
there is something problematic.
I know, and that's a whole other issue. We could get to
It
that.
is, but
That's something, yeah. So,
I mean,
but
Corey, that's true. I mean, there's nothing it's not, I think you're right. I think there is something problematic. I do. I don't think it didn't happen in this election. I think overwhelmingly people wanted to vote for him. And I think in when he was elected in 2016, she got the popular vote, but not by much.
yeah, yeah.
And people say it's because she brought in illegal, migrants to vote in the election. I don't know. I'm
That
just saying
so I've
that's what
studied
I
this.
read.
Yeah, I've
Who
studied this
knows?
issue extensively. So this will make a whole other episode.
Yeah.
I it's not that I don't want to go there. It's just that I don't want to go there now because again,
No.
I have studied this pretty extensively. The talk about 2020 versus 2024, that shenanigans, the only way he could have won that many votes was, that it was rigged or whatever. I don't want to go there. Look, Trump was in office in 2020. He held all the reins of power in 2020. The idea that shenanigans happened while Trump was in office, but he won while Biden held all the reins of power. So anyway, I don't want to go there right now. We can
Yeah.
have that conversation. I'm happy to have that conversation. But the point of this is not to debate whether the election was rigged or that stuff. The
Right.
point is to better understand what some of your priorities are, a lot more about you as a human being and your story, and just to connect as human beings rather than to get into a contest over particular issues, because they do that plenty on Fox News, on
Yeah.
OANN, on every on ABC, NBC,
Right.
CNN. They do that all the time, and we don't need more of that. I think we just need more of connecting. We need more connecting on a human level, knowing that you voted one way, I voted for another way on the presidential ballot. We probably voted similar, or if you were in my state, in my area, we probably vote similar on a lot of other things down the ballot. But here's the thing: I got two or three more questions to start to land the plane. One is what I call the TP&R question, and that is, what do you think each of us can do to be able to share space with, have better conversations with, and even nurture relationships with people across these differences? So that's people, and we've been talking about people who have different backgrounds and beliefs than we do, who get their news from different sources than we do. How can we just do better at talking politics and religion without killing each other? Or is it even possible?
Well, just, over time, over decades of time, starting in the 90s when everything became politically, you gotta be politically correct. I think like that's where the problem lies. We're told don't talk about abortion, don't talk about politics, don't talk about religion. Those are like the three top, taboo um conversations we're not allowed to have.
Oh, I'm
Don't
having
bring
it.
it up at the table. Nobody,
Yeah.
I can't have my dad and when he was my husband, I can't have his uncle at the same table. We're talking pro-Trump and anti-Trump. Not gonna go well. But people can't, and I think my dad would be fine. I think that unfortunately, we're told don't talk about it. I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to talk about COVID. I don't want to talk about masks. I don't want to talk about vaccines. I don't want to talk about this. Why not? Because, we've become a society where we're not allowed to talk about what is controversial to learn somebody else's opinion. And you don't have to agree with that person, but you know what? You might change your mind, and that's okay.
That's okay.
Nothing wrong with changing your mind. I changed my mind over over time. So, you're allowed to change your mind. I know that, you want to hold out, people want to hold on to their beliefs, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with doing that. But there is a time where you can change your mind, or maybe not. But we have to be able to listen to each other and let them talk. I mean, people would say, well, you don't listen and you don't let people talk. But, you know, just by doing this, by listening, you disagree, you're worried about our First Amendment rights that they're going to be imposed upon or infringed upon. And I don't feel that way.
Hmm.
And that's fine.
Yeah. I
There's
could be
reasons
wrong.
why.
I'd like to,
Yeah.
I hope I am wrong, in fact.
Right, right, right. And it's fine that you feel that way. We really didn't talk about why you feel that way. Um, I would like to hear more about that, but
You'll
I
have a
felt
chance to ask me questions in a second.
oh, okay. I felt that way. I still kind of feel that way. I'm really not I do post some things, and people actually thank me for posting certain things, you know. But I remember I posted something, oh my God, way back in like 21. It was May of 21, and I was very upset to hear that Fauci said something about the school year coming up is going to be the worst one ever, and something like that with the spread of COVID. And I was like, oh my God, enough already. Enough with this fear mongering. It's fine. I know people died of it. I know it was very unknown, and it was very early on. But I was like, we can't keep our children and we can't keep our lives restricted forever. This is something that with treatments, and they I think at the time they had the vaccine had rolled out, so people had the opportunity to do that. The results of the vaccine were just, with the adverse effects were also coming out too. But then there were other ways of treating it that were controversial. But for me, I was like, okay, enough already. The kids need to get back to school, and you have to stop making this into something that everybody's fearful of. You know, and we know COVID turned out to be, it is a very serious virus. We know that, but it was a manageable one for some.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So I'm just saying that I posted something and I didn't tag anybody in it. I just posted something about that and people went berserk. My ex-husband's family, I was married at the time, they they blocked me.
Oh, wow.
He got a call from his cousin telling him, tell Natalie not to post those things. She's causing trouble in the family. And I was
Oh,
like, I didn't tag anyone.
yeah.
I tagged no one and I didn't mention anybody. That's your choice to read it and take offense. And that's up to you if you took offense and to defend whatever he said. I wasn't trying to, and then I got it became a big problem.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so things
That's
like that,
unfortunate. Yeah. That's
and I
unfortunate.
took it down. I took it down. It wasn't censorship by, the government or by the media, whatever it was, whatever I
But
have.
even if we
Posted it.
individually have those impulses to like, you can't say that, you can't post that. Like for I've been told similar things about things I've posted. And my first response is go fuck yourself. Like, you do you, I'll do me. You want to
Mhm.
engage with me about it? Fine, let's have a conversation about it.
Yeah.
But don't fucking tell me what I could post, what I can't post, what I could say, what I can't say. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like,
Because
let's
that's
have a
freedom of press. That's freedom of
free,
expression,
yeah. And again,
freedom of speech.
so some of that gets misunderstood as, but the spirit of the freedom of speech, like, let's have the conversation. Let's remember who defended the Nazi party in Skokie, Illinois in the late 70s to get that Supreme Court case. It was the Jewish lawyers of the ACLU who defended them because they said, when we got to defend the freedom of speech and freedom of assembly is when we disagree with the speech, not when we agree with it. That's when it's important to that's this, not only the constitutional law of freedom of speech and freedom of assembly and freedom of redress of grievances, it's the spirit of the freedom of speech. So, you know what? Either go fuck yourself, go pound sand, or do something else. But don't fucking tell me what I could. Sorry, I'm going off the rails here. We got the
It's true
explicit
though,
rating,
but
so
you're
we can say
right.
what we
But
want to
you're
say.
right, Corey. It's out there and people say, oh, it has to be regulated. Listen, certain things have to be regulated. I mean, you can't be promoting, crimes against humanity and children. You can't do that.
Right, right.
Yes, I definitely agree with that. Um,
So there is a
but
limit.
there is a limit. I mean, crimes against humanity, I think, is the limit.
Yeah.
That's,
Okay.
and or violence against someone that, there is a limit, of course. But to say, hey, you can't post that, it offends me, and you're comparing a great figure to another figure that we don't agree with. Like right now, they're saying Trump. I mean, did she compare him to Hitler? I don't know. I don't remember her saying that. I know she said he's a fascist. I'm like, all right, enough already. Like this is just, and then, oh, he's a fascist. You stop. Like
Yeah.
he's not a fascist.
The
You know?
hyperbole isn't helping.
Yeah, exactly. Like the extreme examples and all that, and jumping on he's a misogynist and he's a this and he's a that. I'm like, well, yeah, well, you know what? He hires like pretty smart women. He hires like smart women. He loves beautiful women. And if you think that that's misogyny, I don't know. I'd like to go work for him. Hire me.
Oh man, you're opening up a whole can of worms. There's so much I want to respond to, but we don't have time. So second to last question. Do you have any questions for me?
Yeah. So I think I had asked you, kind of answered why you think our First Amendment rights will be infringed upon.
Yeah. So the best example I can point to is in June of 2020, Trump brought over some of his highest ranking officials and cleared Lafayette Square violently with force. So that was an example of what he actually did. Now, what we know what he wanted to do is he instructed Milley to fire upon those who were peaceably assembled. That's one of the five freedoms in the First Amendment. To fire upon those who were peaceably assembled, whether he said to use rubber bullets or not, it doesn't matter. To disperse a crowd by force that was peaceably assembled is a direct infringement on their First Amendment rights, the freedom of assembly as well as their freedom of speech. And why was he doing that? So he could stand in front of the church and do a photo op with a upside down Bible. So to me, on so many different levels, I disagreed with that. It was clearly a Bible, a book that he's never cracked open, and as a Christian, for what, a photo op to do what? Um, so that to me is just one illustration of many that I could cite where his first term he's said and what he's done indicate to us what the trajectory of where this is going. So if you don't think like, listen, I won't project this onto you, but I believe that he is going to further test the freedom of press to if Matt Gaetz is the AG, believe you me, New York Times getting sued, Washington Post is getting sued, NBC's getting sued, and individual journalists are getting arrested. As Stephen Miller said, we're going to arrest them now. We're going to round them up now. He was talking about immigrants, but this has also been said about individual journalists. And lawfare can catch up with us, but they ain't catching up with us for another 5 years down the road. We will already have done what we wanted to do. He said it out loud. We just got to listen. When someone tells you who they are, sometimes you just got to listen. So any number of these, not only that, also as someone who takes my Bible very seriously, having grown up going to the Orthodox synagogue, Sons of Israel, and now as a Christian, I read my Bible every day. The two parts of the religious, the freedom of expression, freedom, to practice religion, but also the establishment clause, those two halves are in tension. We need both of those. So if you take one of those legs out, the whole thing falls apart. So the abuses of religion or instituting religious thresholds for whether it's hiring practices or whether it's funding or lack of funding, I think any one of these five freedoms in the First Amendment are going to be strained beyond anything that we've seen to this point. And all we need to do is actually look at the record and reckon with his actions, his official actions, as well as his what he said and what he intends to do. So that's why I'm concerned about the five freedoms of the First Amendment.
I mean, the space has to be safe for the president. I mean, it has to. Whatever.
He didn't need to clear the square to do that. He could have stood in the Rose Garden and held an upside down Bible and pretended
Sure.
that he actually
I
read it
don't
once.
know why it was at the church. I think there was a reason why, but whatever. I don't know why that was, but I to maybe, I don't know if it's to switch gears or whatever, to go to J6 for a minute. When when you say they edit, Miller said this about rounding people up. And I'm very concerned, or, I worry about like what is actually said and what is edited. Because with Donald Trump, and he was speaking at that, I guess it was a march that day or a rally. There was something going on that day, right? He had like people went down there to listen to him speak. And the one thing they never showed on TV was that he said, let's march, peacefully and patriotically.
No,
And
they showed that plenty. He said, and that's been aired. That's been aired plenty.
I don't
We'll go
honestly, like,
peaceful and
it
yeah.
was hard to find that after a while. And on the media, they weren't showing it. Not on like mainstream media. I mean, I
I
know that.
disagree with that. They showed they showed parts of that speech, and a lot of, at least the journalists that I watch, make a point of saying that was a part of the speech. But there were plenty of other
Really?
parts of that speech where he said you got to fight and fight like hell.
Which isn't necessarily like, he doesn't mean it in like we're getting in fist fights.
yeah. So
Fight like hell means, just like Kamala said, we're gonna continue to fight.
yeah, the fact that we're still talking about it and trying to analyze the language, Here's the thing.
I think
What
it means
happened
like
on
standing behind what you believe. That's what they mean. Standing behind what you believe, and then it's taken out of context to mean something violent. And then you
right.
have the morons who were at the Capitol breaking into the Capitol. I mean, they weren't all Trump supporters. I think there are a lot of other people there. And you have Pelosi and Muriel Bowser who refused, the presence of the National Guard there that Trump offered 3 days prior, and they refused that. Why are they refusing that? So whatever. J6 is like a big old mess.
It's a quagmire.
Big old mess. And it shouldn't even be like something that I mean, people are comparing it to 9/11. What are you doing comparing that to 9/11?
January 6th was kind of a big deal.
It's a big deal, but it's not, I don't think it's a big deal in a way that I think it was made to be bigger. I think it was allowed to be that way. Police were told to let people in, let them in. Go ahead, here, open the door.
Uh,
Why are you
I
opening the doors?
Again,
Why
this is
isn't
a
there
whole
better
this is a whole other
security?
episode. This is a whole
I
other
know,
episode.
I know it is, but it's like interesting stuff to talk about and listen to your point of view and what you thought that day. And I was horrified, like from the other end of it, like from an opposite view.
So just to kind of put a bow on this thing, I'll tell you that as much as I disagreed with why a lot of people were there in the first place, it was the Stop the Steal rally, right? So as much as I disagreed with the premise of why they were there, it was to me, they had not to me, constitutionally, they had the right to be there.
Right.
So if they wanted to be there for the moon is made of cheese, that as much as it's to me, it's like gravity doesn't really exist or the earth is flat, as much to me as it's like a fantasy land, like they have the right to be there. What I disagreed with was the small percentage of people of that big old route, because there were a lot of people there that engaged in their constitutional right to peaceably assemble, right? Small percentage of them, let's say 1,000 or 2,000 people max out of the tens of thousands that were assembled, broke off and then disrupted the disrupted the congressional constitutional process of certifying the counting the electoral votes. So there were tens of thousands of people who peaceably assembled. As much as I disagreed with why they were there, I agree with their right to be there and what they were the fact that they had the right to protest for whatever the hell they wanted to protest for. Again, as much as I disagree with it, the couple thousand or however many that were that broke off with the intent to march down to the Capitol and violently, with force, disrupt what was going on. That's kind of the center of our democratic process or democratic republic, whatever. People have been commenting on these other videos. We're not a democracy. Fuck you. I know it's not a democracy. It's a democratic republic, constitutional order. Go fuck
Constitutional
yourself.
republic.
Yeah, constitutional republic. So I get it. I understand. You're going to stop me. I ended a sentence with a preposition. You're going to interrupt me because I ended a fucking sentence with a preposition. I got it. Anyway, this is really I appreciate you taking the time, because there's a lot of people I would reach out to that would never have this conversation. So I really appreciate you taking the time to have the conversation with me. I just like hanging out with you. So
Yeah, I know. Gotta do
I
it again.
hopefully I'll be in Jersey sometime sooner. If you're ever in SoCal, you got to let me know.
Where
Uh,
are you in South Carolina, Southern
no,
California?
Southern California, yeah. So I'm just a little bit north of LA, the very,
Oh,
very, very
okay.
northern part of LA County. So a lot of people don't know. They think LA, oh, it's all, liberal and whatever. I live in a district that is as purple as it gets. So Mike Garcia won his two full terms by 1/10 of 1% of the vote, both times. He just lost by about the same margin, by about, yeah, well, a little bit
Oh,
more. But he lost within 1 point.
yeah.
um, the U.S. House member. Same thing with our state legislature positions, the Assembly member and the state Senate, all very, very closely held, goes back and forth between Democrat and Republican. So we're a very purple district up here in the very northern part of LA County. But anyway, we're close enough. Lisa and I were down in Hollywood for the big award show for this industry I'm a part of. We went to Katsuya. So if you're ever out here, I'll, change your life by eating the best sushi you've ever had.
Oh, all
And
right.
yeah,
I got to think about it because I'm trying to get us to go to California, but it would be closer to San Diego, which is
yeah,
I
yeah.
know, but I could always rent a car.
No, I mean, we could come down there. That's only a couple,
Yeah.
3 hours away. So
Yeah, I know. It's actually not that far.
Yeah, it's not that far at all.
And
Anyway,
same
this
here.
is great, Nat. Thanks so much for doing this. And yeah,
Problem.
let's hang out again real soon.
Okay.
All right.
All right, Corey. Say hi to Lisa.
You bet. You bet. And as always, if you dig what we're doing, remember to follow the show, write that review. And now you can watch these conversations on YouTube and support us on Patreon. It's youtube.com/@politicsandreligion. And the Patreon is patreon.com/politicsandreligion. Check them all out. Subscribe, get some TP&R swag. Your support really does make a difference. So thank you for all of it. Now, go talk some politics and religion like me and my friend Natalie just did with gentleness and respect. And have a great week.